So the colonial period of the Americas kind of ranged from the mid to late 15th century to the 18th century. And this was a time of really strong, irreversible change. It was marked by European exploration and the desire to colonize something new. This was mainly led, y'all, by the Spanish, the French, the Dutch, and the English. So this era, reshaped the New World's demographic, the cultural and political landscapes that were here. So today we're going to explore the controversies surrounding this period of time, the alternate narratives, and the lasting effects of colonization on the pre-Columbian societies that were setting the stage for modern America and the kind of complex problems that we have today here in the USA. Okay, so the European colonization and ambitions and realities, right? The European colonization of the Americas was driven by a mix of these economic ambitions, religious ideals, and a hunger to want to explore things. This establishment of colonies from these small little microeconomies that the Spanish had created, all the way to the English plantations, they created new economic systems that were heavily reliant on agriculture, fur trade, and the exploitation of natural resources, which, if you look, we still do a lot of that to this day, right? But the realities of colonization were far from the noble aspirations, I guess, if you will, professed by the colonizers, who were really objectionists. Okay? So the introduction of European governments, economic systems, and cultures that came here, these often came at the expense of the indigenous people and the society that we talked about in the previous video and their way of life. Okay? So I really want you to think about this, okay? As we kind of go along, keep that in mind, okay? So the indigenous peoples and the European settlers, it was a clash of worlds, right? The impact of European colonization on indigenous populations, this was devastating, okay? And we talked a little bit about this earlier. The diseases like smallpox, for which the indigenous people had no immunity for, this caused widespread mortality, a lot of death, and it decimated entire communities of people. This biological onslaught, right? This was a worse than the coronavirus to these people, okay? The biological onslaught was compounded because they were being ripped from their lands. There was enslavement and there was cultural, I don't know, they were erasing culture. But the narrative of the indigenous people as mere victims overlooks these complexities of their resilience and the way that they had to adapt to the white Europeans. So take this, from armed rebellion to the formation of alliances with these new European conquerors, if you will. The indigenous people actively resisted colonization, even as they adapted to the new realities that European colonization imposed on them. So let's explore some of the beyond the victim and conqueror dichotomy of this, okay? The conventional narrative that we were all taught in school, it often frames the story of this in terms of victims and conquerors. It overshadows the nuanced realities of these encounters. Alternate narratives, okay? Let's just call them what they are. Alternate narratives really highlight the agency or the will of the indigenous people, their diplomatic strategies, the mixed impact of colonization, including instances of cooperation and cultural exchange. Moreover, I think recent research has begun to explore the role of Africans, both free and slave, in shaping colonial societies. So, challenging the Eurocentric focus of traditional histories is becoming more and more common in American history as we study this. So, colonial society and culture, the foundations of a modern America. Okay, the colonial era laid the foundation for economic, social, and political structures that would eventually become the USA, the United States. The development of these colonial governments introduced ideas of democracy and representative government, albeit initially for a very limited portion of the population, right? So economically, the reliance on slave labor and the exploitation of indigenous land really kind of set the precedents for racial and economic inequities that persist even until 2024, even until today. Culturally, the melding of European, indigenous, and African traditions created a very unique tapestry right down to our food that we eat. And these reflect both the harmonies and the controversies, if you will, of colonial America. So let's talk a little bit about the good, the bad, and the ugly, the dirty side of the legacy of the colonial America. The land before America, right? Let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly of it. So the legacy of the colonial era in shaping America has a lot of legs to it, right? It has good, it has bad, it has dirty, it has damn right sinister. On one hand, the era set the stage for, I guess we could say, democratic ideals and created a cultural landscape that was very diverse for the United States. On the other hand, it established serious problems and patterns of racial inequality. It established a pattern of environmental degradation. And these things continue even until today. So as you can see, this is not without controversy. Controversy surrounding the colonial period, they often focus a lot on the glorification of European explorers and settlers at the expense of the violence and injustice that was inflicted upon indigenous people and enslaved workers. So revisiting this era of American history requires us to take a critical examination of the narratives that have shaped our understanding for this entire American historical process. We have to recognize the contributions and the suffering of every single person involved. So the colonial period's effect on pre-Columbian societies and its roles in setting the modern table, if you will, for America, like I said earlier, is really profound. It's really complex. And as we explore the narratives and acknowledge the controversies of this era, we gain more nuanced understandings of the forces that have shaped America to get us to where we are today. As we reflect on this period, I want you to think of the challenges that continue to confront us. Think about the enduring legacies of colonization in contemporary society, how they prompted critical questions about justice, reconciliation, and how we can learn from the past to create a more inclusive future for everyone here, which a lot of people are fighting against. So as we contemplate the colonial legacy, we really have to consider how the foundations laid during this era continue to influence social, political, and cultural fabric of America, for better and for worse. Okay? So this colonial era of America wasn't all bad, but it wasn't all good either. There were problems all across the Watchtower. We had a lot of serious issues. and they led to where we are today.